Steve, be so kind to make me a cup of... What's that? You think plants are more exciting than animals? Okay, let's see what you got for us today. So what could be so dangerous about plants? Only those who've never seen a really dangerous species may think this way. Take, for example, the Himalayan balsam. This big and beautiful flowering plant will grow wherever it wants. If you touch its seed pod, the seeds would disperse in different directions. They literally explode in your hands. Himalayan balsam can produce up to 800 seeds in its lifetime, which can fly up to 23 feet. When the seeds fall into the water, it may travel 6 miles before it germinates somewhere on the shore. So if one day you discover a Himalayan balsam in your backyard, well, I feel sorry for you. Because the rate at which the plant spreads is the least of the problems. As soon as the Himalayan balsam grows up, it blocks the sun for the nearby plants. Moreover, it produces so much nectar that bees and other pollinators ignore other flowering plants. You see the end game? Himalayan balsam is literally taking over, but the insects can consider themselves lucky if they can just collect the nectar and go about their business. As I said, seed pods explode, and sometimes parts of the plant may hit a bee flying by. I doubt one can survive this collision. What a beautiful day! What could possibly go wrong? To be honest, when Steve told me about this plant, I thought it didn't seem dangerous enough. Unless you're a gardener, a flower, or a bee, you have nothing to worry about. Though the stinging tree is quite another matter. It looks completely innocent, but even an accidental touch is enough to induce excruciating pain.
Oh, my word! You saw that? I only just rubbed my finger over that leaf and... it got me! It got me! Oh, that feels like it's burning! It really does!
This is not an exaggeration. People who've been exposed to stinging trees say the pain lasts for months, sometimes even years, and no painkiller, including morphine, can soothe it. The pain intensifies if something touches the affected spot, the temperature changes, or even if water gets on it. They say that dogs and even horses who touch the stinging tree can die in a matter of hours. But how can a plant be so dangerous? If you look closely, you can see tiny hairs on the surface of the leaves, very thin and very brittle. They cover the entire plant, and the slightest touch is enough for these hairs to pierce the skin, then they instantly break and inject the toxin. And that's it. There's no going back from there. The good news is that not all plants try to kill other plants, or humans. Some just have a peculiar smell. Amorphophallus and Rafflesia arnoldii smell like corpses. No, seriously. If you touch this huge flower, your hands will emit a revolting aroma of rotten fish and meat. And to be honest, I'm not sure you can get rid of this smell quickly, though nature has something even worse. How do you like this smelly combination of rotten flesh, sweaty socks, rotten onions, and feces? I hope none of you are eating right now. Why would any plant smell like that? The answer is simple: to attract pollinators. While typical flowers lure bees and butterflies, these prefer carnivorous insects who need rotting meat. So at certain hours, the flower begins to spread its disgusting scent. Some plants take their deception so far, they even warm up to 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, insects mistake them for meat, they fly inside the flower, realize there's nothing to eat here, and just fly away with pollen on their legs. But Rafflesia arnoldii apparently decided that warming up was lame, so it grew up to become the largest flower in the world. Moreover, this parasitic plant literally consists of one flower, and of course it has a terrible smell. If any of you touched or smelled these plants, share your experience in the comments. By the way, have you ever felt like there was some kind of danger nearby and you needed to hide from it ASAP? Or switch to attack mode? The reason I'm asking is that scientists discovered that a chemical compound called putrescine, produced when dead bodies rot, can heighten your alertness. That's the so-called fight or flight reaction. Humans, like many other animals, survived thanks to it. Studies have shown subjects either wanted to run away or become more hostile, as if they were in danger. Of course, they used putrescine for the experiments, not plants that smelled like rotten flesh, but who knows? Now check out this eucalyptus tree, the very tree adored by koalas, toothpaste makers, and cough drop fans. In fact, that's a very useful tree, which is why you don't expect any danger from it. However, eucalyptus trees tend to drop their bark, leaves, and limbs. The higher the eucalyptus, the riskier it gets. In fact, these trees are drought tolerant, but to get better survival chances, eucalyptus trees get rid of their limbs. Sounds pretty reasonable. If the trunk survives, the limbs can be regrown. The problem is that eucalyptus trees can't predict where the limbs would fall. They are trees after all. A huge chunk of wood falling from a great height can cause grave injuries and even lead to death. Moreover, even the healthiest and strongest eucalyptus tree can suddenly become dangerous. In some places, they even put signs to warn off falling branches. There has to be a meme in Australia. Even a tree branch is trying to kill you. Though actually, that's a real issue. And I'm not making this up. In 1990, a tree about 79 feet high dropped a branch that fell on a preschool girl. The girl died. In 2010, a 14-year-old boy was killed by a falling eucalyptus branch which crashed into his tent. And indeed, these are definitely not some isolated cases. Eucalyptus trees drop their branches all the time and hit literally everything. As if mortal danger wasn't enough, turns out eucalyptus is also a fire hazard. That's actually not surprising if you think about it. Not only does a tree drop all unnecessary stuff during a drought, it's also full of oil. It evaporates very well in the heat, and the resulting gas can ignite in an instant. One spark is all it takes to turn the forest into a fire-raging hell. Well, let's just be grateful eucalyptus trees don't grow giant cones. If they did, we'd get fireballs along with burning branches. As a matter of fact, some trees do have giant cones. Bunya pines also have cones, as pines are supposed to. The only problem is that they're very big. Well, they're damn giant. These cones can weigh 10, 20, or even 40 pounds. Now imagine this stuff falling on you from a height of 160 feet. No wonder these cones are referred to as potentially deadly. We know this cone once killed a cockatoo, and in 2012, this coniferous projectile fell on an elderly couple. Thankfully, both spouses survived and suffered only bruises and scratches, but only because the cone hit their hands, not heads. In short, it's not surprising that warning signs are placed next to the bunya pines. But you know, I'm actually lucky. I believe dangerous plants are those that can drop something on my head or sting me with toxic leaves. But for people with allergies, even something as simple as pollen is dangerous enough, especially if there's a lot of it. Actually, most plants produce much more pollen than they need, and conifers are no exception. Some types of pine can produce up to 4.8 pounds of pollen in just a few weeks. Why so much? Well, that's sort of a precaution. From the evolution standpoint, the more pollen the wind spreads, the more territory the species can claim. Well, for the people with allergies, this is more like a horror movie. While some plants are trying to imitate a pollen apocalypse, others have learned to communicate. And I'm not talking about that strange theory that trees have some kind of social network in their roots to exchange news. Back in the 1990s, Professor Wouter van Hoven discovered that when antelopes eat the leaves of the acacia tree, it increases the amount of deadly tannin produced in its leaves, and at the same time releases ethylene into the air. It warns other trees of impending danger so that they quickly begin to produce more tannin. And it really works. In just 5 to 10 minutes, its concentration increases, making acacia leaves completely inedible. Animals, of course, are aware of this tree alarm, so they carefully check where the wind is coming from. Another self-defense strategy of the acacia tree is an alliance with Crematogaster ants. The insects get a great place to live, and the tree gets tiny but very angry bodyguards ready to attack anyone who decides to snack on acacia leaves. For example, they can get into the animal's nose or mouth and then bite the mucous membrane. That's nasty. While trees and ants get along just fine, trees from the Pisonia genus don't sweat the small stuff. They produce very sticky fruits that hook onto the birds and travel long distances. It's just like with pollen. The further you can spread, the cooler you are. But Pisonia trees went a little too far. Sometimes their fruits are so sticky they kill their winged carriers. Pollen fruits attack insects, insects attack birds. But after a while, they get so many seeds stuck to their feathers that birds simply can't take off. Those poor birds that aren't eaten by crabs or other scavengers die of starvation at the base of the tree. Sometimes dead birds hang right from the branches like eerie Christmas decorations. And it all sounds a little too harsh? I mean, I do realize that's wild nature and all that, but does it make any sense? Scientists came up with several theories. For example, one says dead birds act as additional fertilizer for Pisonia trees. But the experiment showed that live birds provide more fertilizer. According to another version, Pisonia trees could use dead birds as a raft to deliver seeds to other islands. But these seeds die after just 5 days in salt water. Eventually, scientists arrived at the conclusion that all these terrible deaths are just a side effect. Yes, these deaths are just meaningless. The seeds have to be sticky so they don't fall off the birds. And as for the fact that someone dies because of it, well, whoops. The jumping cholla cactus is much more humane. In fact, its spines simply cling to animals or people that touch the plant or get too close when a strong wind blows. The jumping cholla cactus covers some distance, then unhooks and quickly roots in a new place. Of course, for most animals, this cactus doesn't cause much of an inconvenience, but only if the animal is big enough. A coyote pup covered in several spines is in real danger. He'd be lucky to have caring people around. We'll see you later.